My father stole my paycheck for 2 years. Now they're bankrupt and want my help. But I got a restraining order and exposed them to a judge who left them speechless. I'm 24 years old. I work part-time at a restaurant while finishing my psychology degree. And I need to tell this story because what I went through with my parents basically destroyed me for years, but also made me who I am now, I guess. The truth is that until recently, I couldn't even talk about this without feeling that knot in my stomach. You know, that feeling like you're going to throw up or cry or both at the same time. But now that I've been no contact with them for almost 2 years, I can see things more clearly. Let's say, I should start at the beginning, when I was a kid and thought everything that happened in my house was normal. My dad, Kenneth, like 52 years old now, I think, was always super controlling, like obsessively controlling. But when you're young, you don't know that's not normal. You know what I mean? I thought all parents checked their kids' phone history every night, that everyone had to ask permission to go to the bathroom during dinner, that everyone had a list of 30 rules taped to their bedroom wall with the consequences written in red if you broke them. My mom, Linda, never said anything. Literally, never. She was always there like a shadow backing up everything my dad said or did. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Even when he was clearly being a monster. I basically grew up in a box. We had to be home before 6 in the evening every day, even when we were 14 or 15 years old and all our friends could stay out until 9 or 10. We couldn't have social media. My dad said they were tools of the devil or something like that. Super dramatic. He checked our backpacks every night before bed, our notebooks, our books, looking for, I don't know what, I guess evidence that we were being normal teenagers. My brother Aaron, who's 2 years younger than me, also hated all this but was quieter than me. Like he swallowed everything and just waited to turn 18 to get out, which he eventually did. I remember perfectly. When I was 14 and something happened that I now see as a giant sign of how sick everything was. I had made a friend at school. Her name was Sophia, and one day my dad found a note she had given me. It was literally a stupid teenage note that said something like, "I really like you. We should hang out more." You know, normal friend stuff. Well, my dad read it and went crazy, completely crazy. He sat me down in the living room like it was a police interrogation and started yelling at me about why I had female friends, that it wasn't normal, that I was probably a lesbian, and that he wasn't going to allow that degeneration in his house. I was 14 years old. I literally just wanted to have friends, and this man was yelling at me and calling me horrible things while my mom was standing there in the kitchen doorway, not saying anything, just nodding when he turned to look at her for support. He grounded me for a whole month without leaving my room, except to go to school. A month. For having a friend. Can you believe it? And the worst part is that at the time I thought maybe he was right, that maybe there was something wrong with me. Because when you live like that for so long, you start to doubt everything, even yourself. Things continued like this for years, with my dad inventing new rules every week, controlling every aspect of my life, and my mom basically being his silent accomplice. When I turned 16, I got my first job at a grocery store. I was super excited because I thought I was finally going to have my own money, that I was going to be able to buy things without having to ask permission, that I was going to have at least a little independence. God, I was so naive. My first day of work was amazing, honestly. The manager was nice, my coworkers were normal, and for the first time in my life I felt like I was doing something of my own, something my parents couldn't control. I worked weekends and some weekday afternoons, like 4 or 5 hours after school, and I loved it. The work itself was boring, obviously. Scanning products isn't exactly exciting, but it was mine. When my first check came, I was so excited, I almost cried. It was like $250. It wasn't much, but for me it was a fortune. I got home literally running to show it to my parents, thinking they would be proud or something. My dad saw it, grabbed it, and said, "Give me your bank card. From now on, I'm going to manage your money because clearly you don't have the maturity to do it yourself." Just like that. Without asking me. Without explaining anything. I tried to argue. I told him it was my money, that I had worked for it, but he just laughed and said that as long as I lived in his house, everything that was mine was theirs, that was the rule. My mom was there making dinner, and when I looked at her for help, she just looked at me and said, "Your father is right, Maya. We know what's best for you." And that was it. I had to give him my card, and from that day on, every time I got paid, he would go to the bank and take out all the money. I swear, every last cent. It went on like this for 2 years. 2 years working and not seeing a penny of my salary. I tried to hide money a couple of times. I would save $5 or $10 bills when I could. I'd put them in books or in the pockets of jackets I didn't use, places where I thought he would never look. But he found them. He always found them, because he searched my entire room every week like he was a human lie detector. When he found the money, he would punish me by taking away my phone for weeks or making me write 100 times, "I will not steal from my family," as if I was stealing from them and not the other way around. The day I turned 18 was literally the day that changed my life. My dad thought I was going to stay there, controlled and obedient as always, but the truth is, I had been planning my escape for months, like those movies where the prisoner plans every detail of their getaway. I had gotten a second job without telling them. I worked at a coffee shop on Sunday mornings when I was supposedly going to Mass. He was never religious, but they forced me to go. So, perfect. And I had managed to open a secret bank account using a friend's address, so the statements would arrive there. For 6 months, I saved every cent from that secret job, living with the constant fear that they would discover me, that everything would go to hell. I managed to save like $2,000. It wasn't much, but it was enough to rent a room and survive the first month while I got more work. I found a place on Craigslist, a tiny room in an older lady's house who rented rooms to students. It was like 30 minutes from my house by bus, but for me, it was perfect. On my birthday, I came home after my shift at the grocery store, went straight to my room and packed everything I could into 2 suitcases and a backpack. It wasn't much. Clothes, some books, my old laptop that I had. I bought with money I managed to hide from my grandmother when she gave me birthday money. My brother Aaron saw me packing and just nodded. He didn't say anything, but I saw in his eyes that he understood, that he was probably counting the days to do the same thing. I went downstairs and my parents were in the living room watching TV. I told them, "I'm leaving. I'm 18 now, and I'm going to live on my own." My dad laughed, literally laughed in my face and said, "You won't last a week. You're going to come crawling back because you don't know how to do anything without us." My mom just looked at me with that disappointed face she always made and said, "You're making a mistake, Maya. No one is going to love you like we love you." I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just grabbed my stuff and walked out the door. The first few weeks were the hardest of my life. I'm not going to lie. I worked at the grocery store during the day and got another job at night cleaning offices. I slept like 4 hours a day and ate basically rice and beans because that's all I could afford. But I was free, you understand? For the first time in my life, nobody was telling me what time I had to be home, what clothes to wear, who I could talk to, what I could eat. I cried a lot, honestly, because it was exhausting and lonely, and part of me wondered if my dad was right, if I really was as useless as he had always made me feel. But I didn't give up. I enrolled in community college, taking night classes and online. I started studying psychology because after everything I went through, I wanted to understand why people do the things they do, why my parents were the way they were. It took me like 6 months to stabilize, to get a better job at a restaurant where the tips were decent and the hours more flexible. I moved to a small studio. You know, a place just for me, where I could close the door and know that nobody was going to come in to check my stuff. During all that time, my parents tried to contact me a couple of times, messages from my mom saying to forgive them, to come back home, that they needed me. They never mentioned that maybe they had done something wrong. They never apologized. They just wanted me to come back as if nothing had happened. I ignored them, continued with my life, and honestly, I thought eventually they would give up and leave me alone. I was 20 years old, almost 21, when what basically destroyed any possibility of having a relationship with them happened. I came home one day after class and there was a huge package at my door, like a big box, and it had my parents' address as the return address. I thought maybe it was a late birthday present or something. I don't know. A part of me still had that stupid hope that maybe they had changed. I opened the box and inside were a bunch of papers, like 200 printed pages, and a letter from my dad. The papers were loan documents, bank statements, and a bunch of debts that my parents had, accumulated from a failed business they tried to start. Something about selling multi-level marketing, cleaning products, or one of those pyramid scams. I never really knew what it was. The letter said, basically, that since I was their daughter, it was my responsibility to help them pay this debt because they had raised me and fed me for 18 years, that I owed them this, that it was my filial duty, or I don't know what nonsense. The debt was like $50,000. $50,000. And this man was asking me, who could barely pay my rent and my classes, to take responsibility for his financial mess. There were papers where supposedly I had to sign to transfer the loans to my name, documents that made it look like I was responsible for the business when I didn't even know it existed. I called my dad immediately. I was so angry my hands were shaking while I dialed the number. He answered all casual, as if he hadn't done anything out of the ordinary. And when I told him it wasn't going to pay a cent of his debt, he got furious, started yelling at me that I was ungrateful, that after everything they had done for me, this is how I repaid them, that I was a terrible daughter and that I was going to regret it. My mom was on speakerphone and just kept saying, "You have to help us, Maya. We're your family. You can't leave us like this." I told them they never helped me, that they stole 2 years of my salary, that they controlled me and emotionally abused me my whole life, and that I didn't owe them absolutely anything. My dad said something I'll never forget. He said, "We raised you. We gave you a roof. We fed you. And now you owe us all that, with interest." As if I had asked to be born. As if I was their financial investment and not their daughter. I hung up and started crying, like ugly crying. Those cries where you can't breathe and you feel like you're going to drown. But I was also angry. Angrier than I had been in my life. I took all the documents out of the Dawning box and read them completely. Every page. And I realized that many were fake. Like they had false information about me. They said I had been part of the business when I was 17 and wasn't even living with them anymore. The next day, I went to see a lawyer who offered free consultations at the university. I explained everything, and he told me that what my parents were trying to do was basically illegal, that they couldn't force me to assume debts that weren't mine, that the documents had no validity because I had never signed them. He recommended that I send them a certified letter, telling them I wasn't going to help them and to stop contacting me, and that if they kept harassing me, I could get a restraining order. I wrote the letter. It wasn't easy because part of me still felt guilty. I still had that little voice in my head saying maybe I was being selfish, that maybe I should help them even a little. But my therapist, who I started seeing with the cheap health insurance from the university, helped me understand that was the result of years of manipulation, that I didn't owe them anything, that it had been their responsibility to take care of me when they decided to have me, not the other way around. The letter said something like, "Mom and Dad, I am not going to be responsible for your debts. I was never part of your business and the documents you sent me contain false information. I ask that you stop contacting me. If you need financial help, seek professional advice, but I cannot and will not be part of this. I hope you can resolve your situation, but I cannot sacrifice my stability for decisions you made. Maya." I sent it certified to have proof they received it, and for a week, there was silence. I thought maybe they had understood that they were going to leave me alone. How naive. Seriously. They started calling me every day, at all hours, leaving voicemails full of insults or dramatic pleas. My mom would cry saying they were going to be homeless. To please help her, not to be so cruel. My dad left threatening messages saying he was going to ruin my life, that he was going to tell everyone what kind of horrible person I was, that he was going to sue me, stuff like that. I blocked their numbers, but they got new numbers. They sent me emails. They looked for me on social media that I had finally created after years of not being able to have them. One day they showed up at my work. I was waiting tables at the restaurant, and suddenly I saw them sitting there in my section, staring at me. I approached, and my dad grabbed my arm hard, like he left me a bruise, and whispered in my ear that if I didn't sign the papers, he was going to get me fired, that he was going to ruin my life. My manager saw what was happening and kicked them out of the restaurant, even threatened to call the police if they didn't leave. That night, I realized this wasn't going to stop, that they were going to keep harassing me until I gave in or until something serious happened. I went to court the next day and filed for a restraining order. I had to fill out like 1,000 forms and explain my whole story to a judge. It was humiliating and exhausting, but necessary. The judge granted me a temporary order, and after the hearing, where my parents showed up acting like I was the crazy one, he made it permanent. My parents had to sit there listening while I explained years of abuse and control, the theft of my salary, the attempt to burden me with their debts, the constant harassment. My mom was crying, but they were fake tears, the kind people use to manipulate. And my dad looked at me with so much hatred, I felt like his eyes were burning me. The judge told them they couldn't come near me, contact me, or go to my work or school, and that if they did, they would face serious legal consequences. I left that courthouse feeling weird, like relieved but also sad, because deep down, a part of me still wanted to have normal parents, a normal family. But that's it. That's reality. Not everyone has functional families, and it's okay to accept that and walk away when it's necessary. It's been almost 2 years since then. My parents tried to violate the order a couple of times, sending me letters through relatives or showing up near my apartment, but every time they did, I reported the violation and eventually they gave up. My brother Aaron also cut contact with them like a year ago. He moved to another state and started his own life. We talk often, and he's basically my only real family now. I finished my psychology degree last semester. I'm applying to master's programs and working full-time at the restaurant in the meantime. I have friends. I go out. I do normal things I could never do when I lived with my parents. Sometimes I feel guilty. Honestly, I wonder if I should have tried harder, if maybe I exaggerated everything. But my therapist reminds me that those are thoughts that come from years of gaslighting, that what I lived through was real, and that taking distance was the right thing to do. Last week, a cousin wrote to me saying, "My parents are going through a difficult financial time, that they had to sell their house and move to a small apartment, and asking if I could help them even a little." I explained the whole situation to her. I sent her screenshots of the threatening messages, copies of the restraining order, everything. She apologized and said she didn't know things had been so serious, that my parents had always told them I was a rebellious daughter who abandoned them for no reason. I don't feel satisfaction knowing they're doing badly financially. Honestly, I don't feel anything. It's like they're strangers to me now. People I met a long time ago but who are no longer part of my life. And that's okay. I guess not all endings are happy and not all families reconcile, and I've learned to be at peace with that.